Hey everyone, let's talk. A lot of times people want to avoid the tough conversations that we need to be having. And so we are going to be talking about sex and love. I want you guys to understand that sex and love are so very important, but they are not the same thing. So many times in life we get confused about good sex and love. Again, I want to stress that they are not the same thing. So I'm going to talk about it in many different ways. We're going to have these chats on a regular basis because we need to be informed about sex. Now, the first thing I want you to know is that sex is not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with sex. It's all in how you use it. Now, there's good and bad in every situation. And, sex only becomes bad when you make it bad. There's drawbacks to sex, but there's a lot of benefits from sex as well. Now, I first of all want to do a disclaimer. I'm not recommending to anyone that you go out and you have an abundance of sexual partners. And I want to also do a disclaimer that I'm talking to grown people. I'm talking to people that's over the age of 21. And it's time for you to understand your sexuality. It's time for you to understand your body and what makes you tick, what makes you happy, and until you learn the difference between sex and love, you're always going to be bouncing from one to the other. You're always going to get them confused. So today, we're going to talk about just that. We're going to talk about sex and love. And I want to mainly focus on sex for today. On other days, we will combine them and talk about both of them. But today, we're just going to talk about sex. I want everyone to start looking at sex differently. I want you to understand that, first of all, you have to take the negative thoughts that has been put in your head about sex. You need to get rid of all of the negative thoughts that you have ever been taught. We are brainwashed from our early age to think this about sex and that about sex. But I want you to understand that sex is very important, and it was created for a reason, and it was created for more than just reproduction. I want you to know that when you're having an orgasm, when you're reaching a climax, that you are at your most powerful, because during that time, you have no limitations. There's nothing holding you back. You're free. And if we could just think of all of that force, just think of all of that energy that has been released in our orgasm or a climax, all of the energy and the power that is actually put into your sexual encounters. Now, if you think about that, and you could just harness that energy, if you could just harness that power and put it in other areas of your life, you would simply be unstoppable. So first of all, I want you to realize that, sex isn't a bad thing. And with sex comes clarity. With sex comes harnessed energy that you have to learn how to control and put in other areas of your life as well. Now, I want to talk to you a little differently today, because I want you to understand that in your sexual encounters, it should be done. You need to release. You need to be free. It's the only time that you can let go of everything that's keeping you bound. And it's so important that you're able to relax and release. But I want you guys to understand that a lot of times the reason why you're not good at sex or with your partner, you're not pleasing the other person, is because the negative that has been embedded into your subconscious about sex. So we've got to go back into your subconscious. We've got to figure out what doubts, what was put in your subconscious about sex, and we need to get rid of that and replace it with the positive things about sex. I want you guys to also understand But just like if you're going to be good at basketball, you have to practice. If you're going to be good at anything, you've got to study, you've got to put work in it. I know that I've went to school, I've gone to college, I've taken other classes, I've gotten certifications, I've taken board exams for my licensures in real estate and nursing. And so, but it required me to put in some time to be good at that, to be able to go take a state board licensure, to be able to pass that, to become that, and say that I was able to do that crap. Now, I'm not suggesting that you go out and you start sleeping around, but you can use other ways and other means of learning how to be a good sexual partner. It's important that you know what pleases you. And if you know what pleases you, then you can kind of sort of figure out what's going to please someone else. I also suggest to everybody to take an anatomy class. Now, I come from a nursing background, but I've always been very nurturing. And I can talk to you about this because this was a long journey, a long process for me, because I was taught that sex was bad. I was taught that women are not supposed to enjoy sex. And if you enjoyed it, that made you a bad woman. I was taught that sex was for reproduction and reproduction only. I was taught, it was your wifely duty. So you were to get married, you were supposed to have children, become a mother, nurture, so forth and so on. But you were not allowed to enjoy sex because that would make you a bad person. So I can talk to you guys about this because it was a long journey for me to overcome a lot of the things that was pre-programmed into my subconscious. So I would say that, I had a child at the age of 19. So I had a child out of wedlock. I felt extremely guilty for that. And I doubt that, not that I remember because that's been a long time ago, but I doubt that I was a good sexual partner because I felt like what I was doing was wrong. So even as I was having sex, I was condemning myself at the same time, saying that I'm a bad person, yada, yada, yada. And of course, I ended up being pregnant out of wedlock, ended up being a single mother. I'm going to skip over all of that. But I want you to know that I realized that I couldn't possibly have been a good sexual partner because I was condemning myself as I was actually having sex. So, that's the reason why I'm telling you guys that it's so important what you think about sex, what you understand about sex, because your body cannot fully respond if you have negative thoughts and things embedded in your subconscious that's negative about sex. You're not going to enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, the other person most likely is not going to enjoy it either. And so I want you to know that sex is a way of bonding, but I also want to tell you guys something else. Sex is very spiritual. Sex, when you're getting to the orgasm, the climax, when you're reaching that level, you are closest to connecting with the creator, the prime creator. So when you get there, then, it is such a release. You're uninhibited. You're not worried about anything else during that time. There's nothing holding you down. There's no bondage. There's no chains. There's nothing literally holding you down so you can actually move forward. I also want to tell you guys that, so it is important that you learn yourself. It's important that you learn what you like, what you don't like, what turns you on, what makes your baby leap. It's so important that you know those things, and then you start to study the other person. So I want you guys to understand that the people that is good at sex has practiced this in their mind. I'm not saying for you to go out and practice it on person after person after person. That's not what I'm saying, because that's going to be too many sexual ties that you bonded with other people that you really shouldn't have been bonded with. But what I am telling you is that you can practice in the mirror. You can rehearse this stuff in your mind over and over and over. When I want it to be sexy and spontaneous, I practice it in my mind for when I did get the husband. Now, after my little episode where I had a child out of wedlock, I condemned myself. The world condemned me, but I also condemned myself. So that never happened again. I got married. But in saying that, I still had hangups. I still had things that kept me from being the best sexual partner that I could be. So anything that you do in life, you want to perfect it. You want to be the best that you possibly can be. But I can tell you that this has been a long journey for me, because I actually had to see a sex therapist and now I happen to be a sex therapist, but I had to see a sex therapist to help me to figure out why I didn't like to be touched, why I was having these issues. I was going through the motions, and nobody wants to sleep with someone or have sex with somebody or try to have an intimate relationship with somebody that's just going through the motions because they feel like it's their wifely duties. So it was a long, hard road and a long, hard process for me because, I came up in a very strict family with very strict standards for the female to abide by. And so with me saying all of that, here's a clue for you. My father was a Baptist minister, and he was very strict. My mother was very strict. My mother was a virgin when she married my father. She didn't believe in sex before marriage. She didn't believe in any of that. And of course, as you already know, I broke the rules, and it was not acceptable. And I want to also tell people that what I'm talking about requires you to be responsible, because for every mistake that I've made in my life, I've had to deal with and face the consequence. So there's always a consequence to a choice that you have chose to make. So while we're talking about this, I'm going to tell you that you need to look over every possible thing that can happen from the decision that you're making. If there's any one thing that if it happened, it would destroy you and you couldn't go on, then you don't need to do that at all. That's what I want to tell you guys, but there's a consequence for everything. But let's get back to the main topic. So I want you to understand that in this sexual journey, it's important that you know yourself. And a little later, we're going to talk about just like you have a spiritual animal, you also have a sexual animal. And when I talk about a sexual animal, it's animal characteristics, not anything that I'm not telling you that I want you to go be involved in animals. That has nothing to do with it. But like there's characteristics to an eagle, to a swan. So you can take on these characteristics in your sexual life. Do you like, what is it that you actually like? Now, stick a pin in that right there, because we're going to later talk about how you find out what your sexual animal is and what your instincts is in bed. I mean, you have hunters, you have a passive role, you have a dominant role. So it's all of these different things. It's more than what you think. It's more involved than what you think. And if you're going to be fulfilled and your partner is going to be fulfilled and you're going to have a happy existence together, a happy relationship, a happy marriage, then these are things that you need to learn and that you need to be able to do. So we're going to come back. That's another segment about your sexual animal. But what I want you to know is that you've got to study. So I'm a nurse. So I know the anatomy. And so I would study anatomy books and I would say, so if this is how the male body functions and this is how the male body is, if you do this should get this response. If you do this, it should get this response. And I'm telling all of you, you should test out to see what your husband likes, okay? Stop doing stuff that's not making his baby leap. Stop doing things that is not bringing him pleasure, because what's going to pleasure one person is not going to pleasure the next person. So you should be becoming familiar with your husband's likes and his dislikes. What just really drives him crazy? What just really drives him mad? What intensifies the fire that he has burning on the inside? And so you learn about ice, you learn different positions, you learn different places in the house matters, or different places wherever you are, but you are learning what makes that person have an orgasm. You're learning what makes it exciting. And here's what I want you guys to know. You never stop learning. You never stop learning your mate. You never stop learning your husband. You're constantly coming up with new ways as you learn more about the body. This is why I'm telling everybody, take an anatomy class. You need to know everything about your body, but you also need to know everything about the male body. You know what? If you wanted to go play in the NBA, you would practice. Not that I'm promoting porn, because I'm not. But if you run across something and it happens to be porn, and you can learn a lesson from that and leave it and keep on going. I know that people get addicted to porn. I understand all that. I'm not telling you to get addicted to porn. I'm not telling you to even watch porn on a regular basis. But I'm saying that you can always up your game. You can always learn something different wherever your resources is. I look up different articles. I do research on pleasure, and you need to know that there's a very close correlation between pleasure and pain. Now, keep in mind, I'm just talking about sex today. I haven't got to the love portion of this. We're just talking about sex, but we're going to be talking about sex and love. So much later, I'm going to combine the two and tell you the benefits of when you have love and sex. But right now, keep in mind, I haven't said anything at all about love other than to tell you that that's coming up much later on. But I want you to understand that this is an art form, just like if you're painting a picture, or if you're learning to be a baker. You get better the more you practice, the more recipes that you study. So I want you to know that your relationship, the reason why your relationship is getting stale and your love life is getting stale and your sexual encounters and your sexual life is getting stale, because you're doing the same thing over and over. You're not spicing it up. But if you learn how to spice it up, it's better for you, and it's also better for your husband. If you learn yourself, and if you're constantly learning him, you can introduce him to new things that he didn't even know that he liked. You can introduce him to a whole new experience. You can take him to somewhere that he's never been before, and he don't even want to come back from where you take him to. And so it's so important that we understand this, that your goal is to make this experience as close to heaven as it possibly can be. To make this experience as spiritual, connecting as one as you possibly can. And you know what? If you learn as you go, so for the people who's been married, I've been married for 10 years. And so, but I never stopped learning. I never stopped progressing. I never stopped coming up with a way to put a smile on his face. I never stopped coming up with a way to enhance that part of our life, because you don't want to start doing the same thing over and over and over. That's boring. That's even going to be boring for you. And so, but it don't have to be boring. You can spice it up. You can do something different, and you would be surprised how you interjecting something different, how much closer and how much tighter the connection becomes. It's your responsibility to make sure that you're keeping that fire burning. It's your responsibility. And I'm saying the same thing to men and women. It's both of your responsibility to make sure that that fire continues to burn afresh. It's your responsibility to know what brings a smile to her face. And I want you guys to, and women, to understand something. Sometimes when we're talking about sexual encounters and sex as a whole, do you realize that you can have sex without actually taking your clothes off? Do you realize that there's so many different dimensions to this, and it's so much to learn? You can learn something new day after day after day. You can learn something new year after year after year. This is an ongoing evolution. This is an ongoing process to where you learn. As you get old, you desire different things. What makes your baby leap changes. What makes you feel desirable changes. Men like to feel sexy. Men like to feel powerful. They like to feel like they're the protector. They like to feel like they're in control. And so all of this is very important. Women like to feel sexy. They like to feel like that you think they're the most valuable and precious thing on the planet. They like to feel desired. Are you making her feel desired? Are you making her feel like, look, he sees me. He really, really sees me. He sees who I am. He knows who I am. Because I want you guys to know that it's more than physical. It's spiritual as well. And it's so important that you understand that sex in its essence is the most powerful thing that you can be participating in, because it brings you closer to the Creator. Now, I know a lot of people is going to argue that fact. I'm not here to argue. I'm telling you what I know. And this makes you it brings you closer to the Creator, because it's the one time that you're raw, the one time that you're real, the one time that you're uninhibited by anything else. You're just there in the moment, and you're just experiencing the greatest release. And guess what? If you learn to do this properly, you will become one of the awakened ones. See, a lot of people are not woke. A lot of people are sleepwalking through life, and they don't even realize that they're sleepwalking through life. But I want you to know that being awake and staying awake is a lifelong process, and we all have got to figure it out, and we've all got to connect to a higher essence of who we truly are. Stop thinking that sex is bad. Stop thinking that you're not supposed to enjoy it. Stop thinking, I'll be glad when this is over. Stop thinking that it's just about the orgasm, because it's so much more involved in this sexual encounter than an orgasm and a climax. Yes, all of those are great. I'm not saying that they're not. But if you want to have the greatest orgasm and the greatest climax that you've ever had in your whole entire life, you need to take this journey to where you become awake. I want to tell you that again. So many people are sleepwalking through life. You don't even know what you're missing. You don't even know the joy that you could experience and what you could really go through if you were just really awake, if you were just really taking this journey. I'm telling you guys, it's a lifelong journey, and it's worth it. I learn something new each and every day. And we should be striving to learn something new each and every day. But I'm talking about in every area of your life: mentally, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, and sexually. So you should be learning something new sexually about yourself, and something new sexually about your husband. I want you to know it's a journey. And as you learn more about yourself and about your spouse, about your husband, as you learn something new, it is so fascinating. It is so exciting. You just can't even put words to the profound feeling of being awake. The profound feeling that will change your life forever. You guys keep in mind, But as you take this journey and you become awakened, and you start to understand the power that's in the sexual encounter when you do it correctly, when you come to know that power that's in the sexual encounter when you do it correctly, and then you can take that and apply that same power, that same energy to other aspects of your life, it will blow your mind. Until the next time, take care of you. And let's learn how to do this right.